So I am currently working on my second novel and my third work or my third long work of fiction. And I've been given cause recently to reflect on certain things that certain people have told me in the past about pursuing careers, for instance, as a writer or a stand-up comic. They're like, oh, it'll never happen, you know what I mean? Just be pessimistic about it and give up on the whole thing. Don't worry about trying to claim success or trying to attain success as a writer or a stand-up comic or anything like that, because it'll never happen. And that's the sort of thing I think we get told quite a lot in the United Kingdom specifically, that for most ordinary people that sort of success is beyond our reach, that we can't ever really attain to that sort of thing, and that there's this group of sort of innately talented people in society who are destined to go on to great things like that, and you're not one of them, and you never will be, no matter how hard you work, and so on and so forth. So there's no point trying. I think that that's a deeply poisonous thing to tell people with aspirations, that sort of thing, and it doesn't help anything. Um, it just breeds lassitude and, um, well, it makes people fail ultimately because they become hopeless and they lose hope and they stop working on whatever it is they're working on. And yeah, I mean, if unless you do work at what you want to achieve in life, you will never get there. And that's the big message about it. Or you need to be constantly working on what you on improving your, be it your writing or your art, your poetry, or your music or whatever it is, if you really want to be successful at it. So telling people those sorts of things is ridiculously unhelpful. And it's something that I disagree with. I think it's a stupid thing to tell people, and it's usually spouted by the sorts of people who've never tried to do anything like that in their entire lives and never will. And it's totally wrong, because I'm writing this novel now and I can see myself improving as I'm writing it. I'm just doing a first draft at the moment, so I'm not expecting anything really to be great on the first draft. The first draft of anything is always bound to be shit. Those are Hemingway's words, not mine. So I'm just writing this first draft now to try and get the ideas on paper, if you see what I mean, to try and get a rough cut of it on paper or on the page. And but occasionally I do sort of craft a sentence or two that I think might end up being in the final draft. And I think, yeah, that's a really good bit to have in there, or I come up with a great idea that gets put into the text, and I really like that. And you see yourself improving as you go along, and you see your work improving, and it does give you hope. And it does sort of suggest that, yeah, maybe you do have a chance of doing something great, like getting a novel published or having a career as a stand-up comic, which is what I also do. Because I've had some dreadful gigs in the past, and I've had some pretty bad gigs recently. And I recorded those gigs, and I go back through them and watch them again to see where I'm sort of slipping up and where it's not going so well. And yeah, I mean, the thing is, I've also had great gigs in the past. I've had gigs where everyone's loved it and really enjoyed it. So it's a two-way street, and it's a balance of stuff. And I go back also and watch other things online, like some, great and famous stand-up comics now. Like, I was looking for Russell Brand's earlier stand-up online, because I know that he took quite a long time to get success. He started out in 1994 as a comedian, I believe, and I watched this not altogether brilliant bit of his stand-up for TV. I can't remember what the title was, but it was from 2004, and he was pretty good in it. He was alright in it, but he was alright in it after about 10 years of trying to make it as a comic. And he finally got this little bit of stuff on TV, and it's sort of like Russell Brand in a kind of proto Russell Brandish mode, if you like, where even then, even after 10 years of attempting to get success as a comedian, he still wasn't quite there with it, not really. And I know that at about that time in his life, he was also going through all sorts of things like drug addiction, like he was a heroin addict, so he had all that sort of stuff in the background and whatnot. And yeah, he did this thing, it was I can't remember what it's called, a thing for Channel 4, I think, of him being reasonably funny, I think, and had a reasonably good sketch to do with moles on it, which was, yeah, quite good, quite amusing. But nothing like the Russell Brand from Ponderland or any of his subsequent live DVDs and shows. And you see this all the time with comics who, when they're starting out, yeah, they're terrible. That's the thing about it. In comedy, you start out being terrible, and then you get maybe a little proficient, a little bit better here, there, and everywhere, and eventually, after many years of doing it, you're in a position whereby you could possibly maybe be on the television. And I mean, like, after almost a decade of doing it, if you're Russell Brand. Or if you have the persistence and tenacity that Russell Brand has, and if you have, you know, the it's not necessarily a matter of it's certainly a matter of nascent ability, and I think everyone has a degree of ability that's sort of latent in them, and that could be seen to be something germinal and something that can be grown and built upon. Yeah, definitely. But, you know, it's not necessarily a matter of natural talent. I'm just thinking about what the career of Russell Brand would have encompassed in terms of stand-up comedy before that 2004 video. I bet he had some disasters of performances in his time. He certainly would have done. Every comedian who's gone on to become famous has bombed on stage. There's not a single one who hasn't. Many of the best comedians out there have probably bombed again and again and again, and had to pick themselves up from disasters all the fucking time. And, you know, no one remembers your failures. That's the beautiful thing about it. And I just remember some of the times I've bombed on stage, and I think that I'm never going to get someone come up to me in real life. And I have had people come up to me in real life and say, I remember you from such and such a place, you were really good. That's the only thing people say. You never get someone coming up to you saying, oh, I remember you back when you were shit. Or, I remember you were that comedian from such and such a place, weren't you? You were crap. That never happens. I've never had it happen anyway. And, well, I'm sure you do get people who say, I remember when so-and-so was shit. But that only comes after you become so-and-so. Do you see what I mean? And it only comes after you've become someone with a degree of notoriety. And so it's not a reason to feel bad about it. I sort of have to slightly eat my words on that, because yeah, you do get people who say, I remember when so-and-so was shit. I do remember now. Actually meeting at an open mic night a critic of comedy who works for the Bath Chronicle, or used to work for the Bath Chronicle, and he said, I remember seeing Russell Howard when he was shit. And yeah, you do get that, obviously. But then he becomes Russell Howard, and it's, you know, Russell Howard the comedian, the great comedian that everyone loves, or that loads of people love. But that's the name of the game. The name of the game is persistence, and being tenacious, and not getting absorbed by thoughts of I'm not good enough. And because, like, most of the time most people, yeah, if you were good enough at the moment, you would be on the TV, you would have your own show, and so on and so forth. It happens you're not good enough yet, but you need to keep working at it so that in the future you are good enough. And it's a really obvious thing to say, but it is the truth and it doesn't stop being the truth. So, and I look at my writing now, I'm on my third book, or my third work of fiction, and I know that writers only usually get published after they've written 4 books or so, or that's the average number of books that writers have written before they get published for the first time. And I've just finished working on this book, Sergeant Arson, that I've self-published because I really loved it, but it's just not quite right. It's not quite good enough to be published, in my opinion. I don't think, in my opinion. But I nonetheless did it because I knew it wouldn't get published traditionally. I knew that because of how obscene it is, and because of the fact that it's a novella, but that's a little by the by. Well, yeah, but the reason it shouldn't have been published is because there are minor mistakes in it, and there are things like typographical errors in there, but I weeded out 93% of them, I think. But still, and now I'm writing this new novel, this second novel, third work of fiction, and I'm seeing it. Yeah, it's a first draft, and a first draft of anything is always going to be shit, but it's good shit. I think it is good shit, but I'm writing, and it has potential, and it's leading somewhere that I think is really interesting and really cool. And it's another sci-fi story, and my first novel was a science fiction story also. And I really also need to go back and do the third draft, I think, of the first novel that I wrote. But that's again a little beside the point. But yeah, so that's what I really had to say, I think. And I think, so you do see all sorts of people, particularly in comedy, I think, go through it for quite a long time and then just give up on it. And then they get sucked into sort of ordinary life a bit more. They lose their passion for it one way or another, and that's really sad. And I think I know that all that stuff, the losing of passion for things, comes about from the sorts of people, and it's just always in the back of our minds. Because in America, you know, as opposed to Britain, they get told you could be anything you want to be. You can be president of the United States. I think it's Ricky Gervais who basically said words to this effect also. And in Britain, we get told it'll never happen to you, that you're not good enough just naturally, that you're born not good enough, that you're born to be just like a blip in the system, that you're born to stock shelves or something, and that's your destiny. And overcoming that sort of thing and trying to attain greatness in one form or another is incredibly hard, as everyone knows. Like we don't. We reward silver and bronze medalists in the Olympics, but to become one of those, you need to work basically as hard as anyone on the planet doing whatever activity at the Olympics it is. And you have to get into, obviously, the top 3 people alive at that, say it's high jump. You have to be doing the high jump every single fucking day, over and over again, and always trying to get higher on the high jump. You know what I mean? And that's how you get a bronze medal. And there's no shame in a bronze medal in the Olympics, obviously, but it's, you know, it is what it is. It's simultaneously the best sort of life one could ever live, and it's the most challenging thing in the world. but it's fantastic nonetheless. So everyone should ignore the naysayers and keep trying to do it. So thank you everyone for watching. By the way, love you lots. I think I've made the point that I want to make. Bye.